how to play the Grudge on drums. Part 4, the grand finale. In this series, we are covering the Grudge by Tool in its entirety. So if you're just joining us for the first time, definitely check out parts 1, 2, and 3 on my channel. You can find the links to those in the description. Check those out and then come back to this video if you're trying to learn the whole song. If you're just here for the finale, let's get into it. We're going measure by measure. And to start things off, we are in 5/4 time, and we are doing a conversation primarily just between the kick and the snare with some crashes thrown in. And I'm going to show you what the first full measure sounds like, and then we will go back and break it down. And what I want you to understand for the first part of this finale is the accent pattern follows the guitar and the bass. So it's got that ba da ba 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 ba. And the first part of that is like this. So we're catching the first 2 crashes with our right hand and the third with our left. And after the crash with our left, we're going to be adding in kind of like a ghost note on our ride cymbal. And this is going to happen throughout this first section. Really just kind of serves to keep time and imply the 8th note that goes across kind of under the hood while we are doing the heavy accents. So now I'm going to play that up to beat 3, which will have our second snare hit. So that takes us up to beat 3, and then after that, we are going to have another set of 2 crashes. First one catching with our right hand, second one with our left. And I suppose it's worth mentioning at this point, because of your point of view, my right is going to look like the left on your side. So just keep in mind, this is my right and this is my left, and that's how I will be referring to these. So right crash, left crash. And that is going to take us right up to the end of beat 4. We are catching another snare drum and 2 more kicks with crashes, and those are going to be on the upbeats. So adding that into the full picture here. And right after that, to round out the whole first measure, we are going to do another tap on our ride cymbal on the and of 5, followed by a kick drum on the of 5. So putting that all in sounds like this. And that is our first full measure of the finale. We are well on our way. Going into measure 2, we are starting to get into some 30-second notes, and this is going to be on the kick drum. Beat 1 will sound like this. So we are catching the snare and the ride cymbal right into our 30-second notes on the kick drum, and then our snare and a crash. Coming out of that, we have some more 30-second notes coming up, this time going to be on our rack toms. And I'll show you that before we break it down. Before we go any further, I do want to mention pretty much every snare hit you're going to have in this entire finale is going to be a rim shot. So practice those, get them loud and proud. And then coming out of our 30-second note run on the rack toms, the last two beats of measure number 2 are the exact same as the first two beats of measure 1, which again sounds like this. And I'm going to go ahead and add the downbeat of measure 3 in there so you know where this is going. All right, now before we go any further, I will go ahead and demo the first two measures going into the downbeat of measure 3 for you with the click track at both a slower tempo and then up around album tempo. Going into measure 3, this is almost identical to measure 2. The only difference is that the 30-second notes that we put on our rack toms are now simply going to be on one floor tom. So instead of, we simply have, the rest is the same. So I'm going to go ahead and play that whole measure slowly. That takes us into measure 4, which is again very similar. We are just ending it in a different way, setting up the big tom run. The first two beats are the exact same as the previous measure. I'll demo those for you very quickly. Now at this point, the pattern diverges from the previous two measures, and we're just going to be playing some eighth notes. So we're going to be hitting 3 and 4. With crashes on the and of 3 and the downbeat of 4. So that sounds like this. The downbeat of 3, we are catching both the snare and the floor tom, going into a kick with a crash with our right hand, followed by another kick on the downbeat of 4 and 2 crashes, assuming you have 2 crashes to hit. It's going to be with both hands for a much bigger and grander effect going into the next section. And the very last beat of this measure can be a little tricky. I know for a fact that Tool does not record to a click. And it's my hunch that Danny kind of lets the last beat of this measure hang out a little longer so it doesn't neatly fit into the 5/4 meter that the rest of this part is in. So that's why I put a little fermata in the drum transcription. I think this just gets held out a little longer. You'll have to feel it out with the track. But for the most part, all that's happening is a little double stroke with a closed hi-hat, and then we open it up. So very slowly, that sounds like this. So it's just 2 double strokes, and then we leave the hi-hat open. And note how quick that is. Just a couple of bounces, quick flick of the wrist, and then we're opening up the hi-hat. And I'll admit my transcription could probably be better for this. I just wasn't quite sure how to notate that with sort of the unmetered feel there. And then we're going to be back in right on the downbeat of the following measure after that open hi-hat. Now I'm going to go back and play measures 3 and 4 along with the click to the best of my ability with this unmetered part here at the end. Here's that. And that takes us right up to arguably the craziest part of this ending finale here, which is the big tom run all the way down the kit. And this starts with a little bit of a setup, and that sounds like this. Okay, so we are flamming between the snare and the toms, and then catching the snare right before the downbeat of what will be the tom run. Here's what that is very slowly. All right, here we go. Now we are in 30-second notes for the rest of this measure all the way through the end of the tom run. The first segment of that is going to be our downbeat crash that we had from what I just explained, and followed by 7 30-second notes on our high rack tom, sounding like this. Make sure you're catching the kick drum with each crash. Now that is a total group of 8 30-second notes, 1 on the crash, 7 on our high rack tom. Then we are going to move into 2 groups of 6 30-second notes, first of which will again be on a crash cymbal, and the remaining 5 will be on the low rack tom. Putting that together with the first set of 30-second notes. We are almost finished with this tom run here. We are just going to close it out with another group of 8 30-second notes, this time starting with, you guessed it, another crash, and then 3 30-second notes on our high floor tom and 4 30-second notes on the low floor tom going into the downbeat of the next section. Here's that, very slow. Okay, let's put the whole run together slowly. That can definitely be a workout, especially if you played a bunch of times in a row, which you will need to do to get it clean. So start slow and work your way up. Be patient, get it clean, get it strong, and it will sound perfect. Sweet. So coming out of the tom run, we are now going to be in 5/8. This, I guess, is a little bit of a minor detail. You could still count it in 5/4 if you really wanted to, but the phrasing certainly implies 5/8, and I find it much easier to kind of map out where we are if we're counting in 5/8. So that's how I'm going to be treating this going forward for the rest of this finale. And we're just going to take the rest of this measure by measure. So here is the first measure of 5/8 coming out of that long tom run. So our first beat is very similar to what we've seen before. And then coming out of that, we're going to catch a 16th note on our kick drum, followed by the snare and the ride together. 2 more 30-second notes on the kick drum, and then a double stroke on the snare drum with 1 crash. I'm putting this on my China. You can put it on whatever you feel like. Okay, our next measure, measure 7, starts the same way as the previous one. So we have that. And the end of this measure is a little bit tricky as we go into a triplet 16th feel with a conversation between our kick and our snare. And what kind of keeps this steady is the ride cymbal, which does 8th note triplets. I'll go ahead and play that for you here slowly. So our notes on our ride cymbal, we want very accented and on the bell, so that has a nice cut because that's a very prominent part of this fill that we have here. The first hit is simply an 8th note triplet, and that is between the ride bell and the snare. Then the 2 remaining 8th note triplets in that subdivision are further split into triplet 16ths. And then once we get into that, our ride is going to line up with our kick drum. Now putting in the 8th note triplet in with that. Now that whole measure again. Awesome. Now I will put together measures 6 and 7 with the click track for you. Going into measure 8, this is almost identical to measure 6. However, on the last 8th note, instead of a crash, we're just staying on our ride cymbal. I'll show you what I mean. And that takes us into measure 9, which is my personal favorite part of this whole thing. A very sick drum fill going between the snare and the kick, adding in crashes on all the kicks. Very, very cool part. You'll see what I mean. I will play that whole measure for you. Very cool drum fill. However, this can be very difficult to get clean. So again, we are going to build this up super slow. Do not get ahead of yourself. Keep it clean. Keep it strong. And this entire measure is in 30-second note subdivisions. We're going to start with 4 30-second note rim shots on our snare. Not too bad, but keeping those rim shots consistent can be tough. Immediately after, we're doing 2 30-second notes on our kick drum, matched with crashes. So we're going to hit with the right side and then the left side. So that gives us a pattern of 6 30-second notes. 4 on the snare, 2 between the kick drums and the cymbal crashes. And then we're going to repeat that one more time. So we are going to do that pattern of 6 30-second notes twice. And we're going to close out this measure with 4 more 30-second note rim shots on our snare drum. But instead, this time we're going to follow that up with 4 30-second notes on our kick drum. But instead of sticking with every single 30-second note on our hands, coinciding with every kick drum hit, we're going to be doing 16th notes. So there's going to be a kick drum in between each crash. And this also gets tough from a coordination standpoint, because we're doing right, left on our kick. The first crash is going to line up nice. So it's right hand crash, right foot kick. But when we get to the left hand crash, that's also going to line up with our right foot kick. So that can get a little bit messy. Start slow, build it up. Following that fill, we arrive at measure 10, which fortunately for us is identical to measure 6. We've seen this before. Here it is one more time. Going into measure 11, that starts in a very similar fashion. Followed by 2 flams with 16th note kicks in between them. And those flams are first going to be between the snare and the high floor tom, and then we're going to move our left hand up to the rack tom for the second one. And then we are putting kicks in between, sounding like this. And that will set us up for the linear fill coming in the next measure. So here is that whole measure together. And very quickly, before we move on, I will run measures 10 and 11 with the click for you. And that takes us to yet another super sick fill in this final finale. And this one is totally linear, meaning we are only ever hitting one surface at any given time. No limbs will hit simultaneously. This fill also spans 2 whole measures and repeats. So it's the same measure repeated twice. And that starts with a group of 4 30-second notes. We're going to start on our right hand hitting the snare, left hand catching the high rack tom, and then right kick, left kick. The next group of 4 30-second notes is going to be essentially the same thing. We are just moving our right hand over to the high floor tom. Our left hand is going to stay on our high rack tom, sounding like this. Now we'll put both of those groups together. Once we have that, we get into another grouping, this time of 6 30-second notes. It's going to be right, left, kick, kick. So starting with our right hand on the snare drum, then catching our high rack tom. Then the right hand is going to go to our high floor tom, and then the left hand is again going to be on the high rack tom, sounding like this. And then we follow that with 2 kicks. And remember to maintain loud, strong rim shots on your snare drum. And we are simply going to repeat that pattern of 6 twice to close out the measure. So now I'm going to put that together with our previous groupings of 4. So that pattern takes 1 full measure. We're going to repeat that whole thing. So we're going to do that for 2 measures, leading us into our final part to cover here. And this section is going to be all 16th notes going between flams on the toms and our kick drum in accent patterns that are following the other instruments in the song. And that will sound like this. Now, in the actual recording, I think Danny does stay on the same 2 toms the entire time we go through this. What I like to do is kind of descend down the toms. It seems a little more final to me, more of like a statement. But you can orchestrate it however you like. That's the beauty of this whole thing. So I'm going to play the last 2 measures all together because it really kind of is one phrase, sounding like this. So it's that same motif. Bum, 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 bum. First set, it's going to be on our high floor tom, high rack tom. Second set, high floor tom, low rack tom. Third set, both floor toms. Final set, floor tom and snare. And then we just fill it in with kicks. Sweet, I will run those two measures for you with the click track. All right, my friends, I will now run this entire section with the click track at the slow tempo and then again at album tempo. Wish me luck. Whew. Okay, guys, we made it to the end. We got the entire finale. We've got the entire Grudge under our belts now. You should be proud. This has been a journey. We've covered a lot of material, and really none of this is very easy. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching all of this. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad I could share this with you. As always, be sure to like the video and leave a comment if you enjoyed it or found it valuable. Let me know whatever questions you have, comments, feedback, anything. Let's get talking in the comments. I love chatting with you guys. And friends, that's all I have. That's a wrap on this series, and I will see you in another video very, very soon. Thank you.